27th, tomorrow on the 28th, the Historic Anthology 6 and Explorer Anthology 1 release on Magic Arena, bringing a total of 40 new cards to the platform. Data mined inside of the game files were complete lists for both of these anthologies, so we're going to do a quick set review here. Small asterisk that these are data mines. There's a very small possibility that these aren't 100% accurate. They've only officially spoiled, I believe, 5 cards from each of the anthologies of the total 40, but the lists seem pretty reasonable, especially by WotC standards, and a few people have validated that they are referenced in the game files. So we're going to go ahead and jump on into a full review here, starting with the Explorer Anthology, which is definitely the more exciting of the two here. Really a lot of fantastically awesome cards here in the Explorer Anthology. It's also important to note before we dive on in here, even though this is called Explorer Anthology because it's focused on bringing pioneer legal cards to Magic Arena and Explorer, all of the cards in this anthology are still legal in both Historic as well as Historic Brawl, because those platforms are all cards that exist on Magic Arena. So first up here, we have a fantastic mid-range slash sometimes controlling threat in Kalitas. This card's super powerful. It easily slots into the red-black mid-range deck and probably enables some other. It's got a reasonable stat line with lifelink, making it a decent body into aggressive decks. And then its static text here, its replacement effect, is a pseudo graveyard hate for decks that are leaning on graveyard interactions. This will most notably in Explorer exile Cauldron Familiars when they get sacrificed. So welcome addition to the format, exiling cats. Up next, this is a card that I personally have asked for in Explorer and Arena many times, Tireless Tracker. It will remain to be seen, is this card a power level that post-fire design can keep up with, but this card generates a lot of value. So landfall, when a land enters play under your control, you investigate, you get that clue token, and then when you sacrifice clue tokens, you get to put counters on this. For people that haven't played with this card before, the important thing to note about Tireless Tracker is that in your brain, you need to think about this card as a 4 mana card. You play this card on the 4th turn, you then play your land immediately following, and you get a clue token, and then if your opponent subsequently kills this card, it still drew at least 1 card. Almost assuredly worth exploring this card alongside Fabled Passage in Explorer, so that way you can play it on 4, play Fabled Passage, and get 2 clues right away. Up next, we have another card that's assuredly going to be a format staple here. Hanger Back Walker. We've experimented with Hardened Scales decks in this format already, and this card is a really welcome addition into those. Gets X/1/1 counters to start, can pump itself up every turn, and then turns into a board that goes wide after it dies. Really fantastic addition. Tainted Remedy. If an opponent would gain life, they lose that much life instead. I guess they've heard the whining and complaining about people playing against life gain decks that's like level 0 new players hate, so have a sideboard card if you really hate life gain decks, I suppose. Temur Battle Rage. Kind of a card of bygone eras past. I'm actually not sure this card's really going to be playable in Explorer or Historic. When this card saw play in Standard, it was paired with Become Immense, most specifically to give +6/+6 to kind of build a 2-card kill you combo. When this card saw play in Modern, it was paired specifically with Death Shadow, so maybe it's worth exploring a Death Shadow variation with this card, because you'll get combo finishes in that archetype, but that again is Historic and specifically Explorer. I think this card's probably going to come up short, but we'll have to wait and see. Lesha, who smiles at death here. Probably not a Historic or Explorer playable card. This one feels like a Brawl/Cube card in this anthology for sure. Supreme Verdict. We all knew it was coming, and we're all still disappointed that it happened. You will no longer be able to play counter spells against the blue-white control deck, wrathing your board. If you enjoyed playing the mono blue spirits deck, you can shove that one in a trash can now. Goodbye to the most affordable Explorer deck on Magic Arena. If you hated playing against it, say goodbye to that deck. It's probably no longer playable. Shadowborn Apostle, almost assuredly not constructed playable in either of Arena's formats. I expect someone to give me $50 to spend an hour losing matches with this at some point. Quite possibly the most impactful card in the Anthology for both Explorer and Historic is Elvish Mystic. So Land War Elves has long been on Magic Arena as a platform, and you now just get to play 8 copies of it, adding an incredible amount of consistency if you want it to decks that want to play 1 mana acceleration into 3 mana big play on the second turn. Welcome addition to the format. Favored Hoplite gets a 1/1 counter and prevents damage that would be dealt to it until end of turn when it gets targeted by something. This could be a 1-drop that perhaps put Feather Redeemed on the map in Explorer. Could potentially go into a cute kind of Luris Reckless Rage deck. Perhaps Luris is banned, ignore me, but that could be a thing in Historic where that card is still legal, but maybe playable in a few different things. Speaking of Feather and Favored Hoplite, Titan Strength is a card that pairs with that eloquently as well. Getting a Scry and a Pump Up here is welcome with both of those cards. We have yet another card that's similar to Favored Hoplite in Battle Wise. Hoplite gets a 1/1 counter and scries 1. So this notably gives you some redundancy with the card 10th District Legionnaire. That's often the best 2-drop in Feather, so you effectively get to play like 2 copies of that effect for 8 of them, which gives you a lot of consistency in that style of archetype. Searing Blood, easy new format staple, really good against creature decks in aggressive decks. Kill your thing, deal some damage to your dome. In Soul Artifact, this one I'm super excited for. We've got Artifact aggressive decks that have been good in both Explorer and Historic on the fringes. And this is a pretty high power level card that could amp those decks up and put them over the top, especially when you acknowledge the fact that Darksteel Citadel is coming to both of these formats as well. So this is an artifact land that you can slide those scissors onto to have a 5/5 indestructible creature attacking on the third turn of the game. Just ignore the control decks playing White March behind the curtains and put your fingers in your ears and pretend that indestructible is a relevant keyword still in 2022. Back to Nature, destroy all enchantments. Find safety valve card, might see fringe play in sideboards at some point. Siege Rhino, the battle cattle, every mid-range player's favorite card to lose matches of Magic with. I expect we will do that at several points. Rally the Ancestors, powerful combo enabler from standard seasons past. Probably have a lot of the combo pieces for this in Explorer and Historic, huh? So the basic idea with this card, if you haven't played with or against it before, is that you return a bunch of creatures to play with a Sacrifice Outlet and a Blood Artist effect, and then you sack your board and drain your opponent out as a combo finish. Slaughter Games. This is a card that I will be telling people, no, you don't need to board that in here every time we put it in our sideboard. I'm not really sure there's even any decks in Explorer or Historic right now that you really want this type of effect against, but this is the type of effect that people love playing even when they shouldn't and love to spend 4 mana to not impact the board with. Finally, Mausoleum Wanderer. Just ignore the fact that Supreme Verdict was printed and you still don't have Spell Queller, and maybe you can cast Mausoleum Wanderer. This is a card that I was like excited they added, but it's also incredibly disappointing that they gave us Mausoleum Wanderer and didn't also give us Spell Queller. Like, Spell Queller is a card that has counterplay against Supreme Verdict, and the fact that they gave us one and not the other is such a big letdown. It's really peak Wizards of the Coast. Speaking of letdowns and peak Wizards of the Coast, chat, there's technically a second anthology as well, but boy, golly, is the second anthology super disappointing. So remember when they said instead of having one 30-card anthology, they were going to split it into two 20-card anthologies? Well, let's start off the fact with that was kind of bullshit. So half the cards in the historic anthology are the 10 artifact dual lands at common from Modern Horizons 2, apparently. And I'm hoping against hope that maybe this is the data mine is incorrect and this isn't actually the case, but it is so peak LOL Wizards of the Coast decision making to offer us communication telling us we're gonna give you more and split this into two things because we're giving you more, and then have half of them just be useless lands that are cube and historic brawl filler. Like, historic is too fast of a format to play tapped dual lands that only have marginal upside of big artifacts and indestructible. And past the rest of that, speaking of cube and historic brawl cards, this isn't really a historic anthology. This is a cube anthology. I would be very surprised if this anthology is worth buying. Knight of Souls Betrayal, fringe sideboard cards you might play one or two of. Retro Fitter Foundry, kind of a neat build-around card that's too slow for constructed and is a cube card. Glimpse the Unthinkable. This might actually be the most historic playable card in this anthology. Target player mills 10 cards. That's a lot of mill for 2 mana, and this could potentially put mill as an archetype into historic, but one card's not really worth buying an anthology for. Phyrexian Metamorph, another fantastic cube card that might see some fringe play, but probably not. Avacyn, Angel of Hope, not the sweet 5-mana Avacyn, the unplayable EDH Avacyn is here. Layla, Blade Reforged. Haste, 3 mana. When it attacks, exile a top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. If one or more cards are put into exile and or your graveyard, put a 1/1. This card's kind of sweet. Maybe this one's playable. It like attacks as a 3/3 and gets bigger. This card's, I'd believe that this card's played in Legacy. It gets bigger every turn. It draws a card every turn. Yeah, this could be an okay red aggro threat. I could see. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one see play. Opiomancer. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control no snakes, get a 1/1 snake creature token with Death Touch. Hey, look, another cube card. Go Shananti of Life's Origin. Return target enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield. Whenever this or another non-token shrine enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 shrine enchantment token. 5-color historic brawl commander / cube card. Check. Chalice of the Void. This is the one I've gotten the most questions about because this is a Legacy staple and sees fringe modern sideboard play. I do not expect this card to see much or any play in Historic in the current iteration that Historic has. There could be some world in the future where Historic shifts in a direction where this card is impactful, but for people that aren't familiar with Legacy, this card is super good in Legacy because Legacy is an incredibly inbred format where 75% of people playing the format play decks with Brainstorm and Ponder in them, and the more efficient a format gets, the better a card like Chalice of the Void is. But if you look at the decks that see play in Historic currently, they have lots of really wide varying mana costs, and Chalice just doesn't really lock down or shut any of them out. I don't expect this to be a card that sees play. Finally, chat, I saved the most boomer for last. Tarmogoyf is coming to a new platform to let a whole new series of Magic players learn that a stat stick for 2 mana is no longer playable. So for people that are new to Magic, this card at one point cost almost $250 for a single copy in paper because it was frequently a 5/6 for 2 mana. And in Historic without fetch lands, it will probably be a 3/4 or a 4/5 for 2 mana with some consistency. And like maybe there's like some kind of zoo aggro deck that this card will be playable in, but it's really not a good mid-range threat anymore. Your mid-range threats need to have a bunch of text on them that turn into drawing cards and other stuff like that. And this card probably just isn't good enough. It's just a relic of eras past, and not that. All right, chat. Anything else before we wrap this one up? Think we covered everything. Nice solid 16-minute review. I guess closing thoughts. Overall, the Explorer Anthology hit a lot of key cards I'm excited to see. I'm a little disappointed that it missed Spell Queller and Monastery Swift Spear are 2 cards I would have really liked to see in it that would be good additions to the format. For selfish reasons, I'm disappointed that Chord of Calling wasn't in any of these. For Historic, the Historic Anthology is just like pretty disappointing top to bottom. It feels like a real bait and switch if these artifact lands are the 10 extra cards they added to it, that they split this into a second anthology for the sake of padding them out with that. They didn't even give us anything sweet like Aether Vial. Like, Aether Vial would have been a gas card to add to Historic, and they just like didn't do it. There's like 1, maybe 2 playable cards in the Historic Anthology, but they should have just called it like inject cube cards into the format, because that's all it was. Can't wait to bolt a 2/3 Goyf with no hits into the bin. God bless.